All right, I guess we can go ahead and do my thoughts. Yeah, here, let me hide this because I'm gonna post this to YouTube. So everyone say hi to YouTube. Well, I want to go over my thoughts on this DLC. I thought it was really, really good. Now, full disclosure, this is all pretty much gonna be massive dick writing of a fucking review. Or my thoughts anyway, but it's like, it's not often we get games that are this well put together. I mean, from the get-go, I mean, the tutorial is interesting and well done. The world building is really well done. There's tons and tons of stuff to flesh out, like the entirety of like the universe that this game is setting up. And there's definitely like hints and stuff here and there about a bunch of different stuff throughout the world that wasn't actually in the games. And if I'm not mistaken, that whole tribe, Seika's tribe, they're actually from like across the Pacific Ocean. That's what they made it seem like. So they definitely alluded to like another continent as well. This game and the first game took place in like western US, so like Montana to like Los Angeles, basically, like everything in between, because somehow they managed to make like Las Vegas and San Francisco like a maybe 15-20 minute walk in game away from each other. So a little liberty taken there. That aside, the game's just fucking great. It is so well done. It's polished. It's probably one of the most polished and solid games I've gotten to play in recent memory, which is sad considering like we're so far in the future and games are still coming out in a massively broken state. That said, this game I had like a couple issues, like just, and they're minor things. Like I rolled into a space and got stuck. There's a little bit of pop in here and there, although I only noticed it a couple times, so I don't think it's all that bad in honesty. The combat, everything, there was like never a visual hiccup at all. Like all the graphics, everything worked out great. The enemy AI was 99.9% of the time awesome. They were engaging, they were maneuvering, they were countering like what I was doing, they were going in for flank maneuvers. There was just once in a blue moon, they would just go dumb and just kind of stand there, which it honestly, it kind of helped me out a little bit. The combat, oh god, the combat. I'm gonna say this, but let me finish the statement before you just take it in. The combat is like Dark Souls in that it is so fun and like deep and interesting and addictive that you just want to do it over and over and over and over again. Wow, they got this in there. R.I.P. homie. R.I.P. He just passed away like a week before this DLC came out too, so they had to like suck that in like right at the very end. But yeah, no, the combat in this is one of the most fun combat systems in a game, period, just because they managed to like it's both inventive and ingenious, quite honestly. Like a lot of the stuff you wouldn't expect to work does. Like, I mean, in bow and arrow against a giant metal robot, but well, if you hit the weak spots, you could tear off armor and stuff. There's different sorts of arrows and ammo to do that with. Then you've got different kinds of like weaponry to begin with. So you've got, you know, your regular bow and arrow. You've got like a almost Gatling crossbow type weapon. You've got a slingshot. You've got spears that you can throw that have different effects. This DLC itself came up with the Zenith weapon, which was the weapon I pretty much used for the entirety of the end there, which is also pretty cool and interesting, albeit broken. But when you've played as much of this game as I have, and you've done all the things, you've gotten all the stuff, I think it's totally fine to use a busted weapon like that. Plus, there's like no PvP, so it's not an issue. the story, the overall narrative and everything, it got a little wacky, not gonna lie, especially going through 2 to 3, or sorry, 2 to this DLC. It cranked up the wackiness. I would say, if anything, the wackiness happened in the base game, and this just kind of based itself off of it. I'm gonna try to avoid super heavy spoilers, so if you guys haven't played it yet, I mean, there has been spoilers obviously, but long story short, the sequel, Forbidden West, introduces the Zeniths, and this uses what lore they established, but kind of just makes it uses that lore as an excuse to have a big fight in this area. That's really all it is, because ultimately his goals and everything were kind of the same as what they were doing to begin with in the first game. He's just doing it somewhere else. So it's not like super different. It's just, at least in this one, we get a really cool set piece fight with the Horus and all that stuff, which I've been waiting to see that fucker come alive since the fucking first game. That breath is kicking in like a vein. Damn. Yeah, now I can imagine how rank that breath must be, especially because it was like the food they're eating. This lady's eating fucking berries and shit she found in a robot dungeon. Can't imagine those taste too good. But yeah, the story's really interesting. Like, I found there's a lot to take in. They have a lot of like data points and stuff you can find throughout the world that'll kind of flesh out just the everyday lives of people from our time in this game. I like some of the ideas that they put forth that never got like fully expanded on. Albeit there weren't a ton, but what they did mention, like other places, other tribes, other regions, I really want to go check all these things out. I want to explore them. I want to see what like the future, what this future's take is on like New York or Tokyo. I think you go to Seattle. If not, I want to go to Seattle too. I want to go there. Yeah, it's just really cool. Now, the one thing I will say, the one thing that is more or less, in my opinion, a bad thing, and I can see how a lot of other people might not give a shit, and to be fair, I shouldn't give a shit either, but it's just something that was glaringly obvious. In this DLC especially, they hate white men. They hate the white man. I'm not going to get too into it, but I will point out that the only white guys there were either bad guys, or the one that wasn't a bad guy was kind of a stupid, helpless dumbass. That's it. That is it. All like the white men in this were that. There were some black dudes. They were cool. One was kind of like towing the line of a good guy, bad guy, but otherwise everybody was fine. Asian dude, fine. A little bit of a jerk, but he was fine. He was still a good guy ultimately. In this one, the main antagonist, white guy. The first white guy you meet when you meet the village, he's like this fucking, I don't want to say xenophobic, but he's like hardcore cop, basically. Huge asshole, trying to basically lock everybody up, even so going as far as to getting people to spy on each other. The chief, albeit he wasn't really a bad guy, he was probably the only good white guy that wasn't dumb as shit, but he was gruff. You know, he didn't really have a lot to say to begin with. He was more just like a plot device rather than an actual character. And yeah, that was it. Oh, and then there's a side quest where you meet a guy from the original DLC in the first one, and he's just kind of like a bumbling idiot who would otherwise probably die if you didn't come and save him. So that shit's kind of getting annoying because it's so commonplace in media nowadays. It's like across the board, white guys are bad guys. There's no in between. They can't ever be good people. They can't ever be just regular people. They just have to be bad guys or idiots. And it's just like, come the fuck on. Like, I know there is a lot of culture shit throughout the years where white guys have always been put on this pedestal and they're always the hero and blah blah blah, but like, why do we always have to be bad now? That's just something I don't get. It's glaringly obvious to me a lot of the time. Aloy having a gay relationship, don't care. More power to her. Crush that badge, right on. Make sure it's clean, but you know, knock yourself out, go for it. The just huge diversity of ethnicities and stuff, that's kind of awesome. I actually I like seeing that, you know, despite being so far in the future, there are still all these like ethnic groups and all these kind of like tribes and everything like that, just having their own different cultures. I thought that was actually really cool, and I like to see how they adapted like culture that exists now and changed it into the future and made it actually play heavily into how each tribe functioned. And that being said, I mean, that's really the only negative I could give this game. The story's great, the combat's great, the graphics, oh good god, the graphics in this game, there's just nothing better. There's just nothing better. Like, God of War's close, this is better. Red Dead Redemption 2 is close, this is better. The Last of Us, close, this is better. Like, this, especially in this DLC, they just crank down on that PS5 hardware and it looks so good. I probably spent 20-ish hours, 15-20 hours on this DLC in total. At least two and a half, 3 hours were spent solely in the photo capture mode. Like, the photo mode in this game is awesome, and I'm a slut for a good photo mode in any game. This game, top of the top, creme of the creme. Like, that's something I was very thankful for, because good god, I have so many pictures from this game now. So yeah, story, graphics, art design. So like, talk a little bit about all the different like, I don't want to say monsters, but all the different robots they had. They were really fucking cool, honestly. Though you did see a lot of the same ones over and over, not once did I ever feel tired from it. Not once did I ever feel like, oh, it's this again, or how many of these am I gonna have to kill? Like, I was into it, man. I thought it was awesome. Hey Kai, I appreciate you. Cats are fed, you're on my phone, time to get high. Hell yeah, brother. But yeah, the enemy design was so fucking cool. Even though I fought something XYZ hundreds of times, I was still excited to fight it again. That kind of comes back to how good the combat is, but I was never bored of what I was fighting either. Like, the enemy design was so intricate that even though I'd killed something 100 times, I was still finding new bits and bobs about it that I just never noticed before. I really liked how they all have different parts you can break off, do more damage, expose weaknesses. Some even have like fucking Gatling guns on their backs. You can break those off, pick the damn thing up and shoot them with it. Like, it's just so fucking cool. I know I'm fangirling kind of hard, totally justified with this game, but I guess we'll kind of tie everything in. I'll try to break it down a little bit. So for the base game, base Forbidden West, you know what, fuck it, because I don't have much of a difference between the two. I'm going to do it all together. So the base game plus the DLC, all in one. My personal score, you ready for this? But you won't guess it. I'm going to give it a 10 out of 10. If I could go higher than that, this is one of the few games I would make the joke and be like, this is like a 15 out of 10. I genuinely mean it. Like, for me personally, this hits so many fucking notes. I love the aesthetic, I love the combat, I love the gameplay loop, I love the world design, I love the exploration, I love the photo modes, I loved it all. I could go on and on about how much I personally liked it. Now, so for me, I'm gonna have to give it a 10 out of 10 realistically, but if I could go higher than that, I absolutely would. Say 15 out of 10. Glowing review, absolute must fucking play. If you've ever if you have a PlayStation, especially PS5, because this DLC is only on PS5, this has to be something that you own. If you do not own this, you are doing yourself a disservice. And I mean, unless you have like just God of War or Last of Us, why the hell do you have a PS5? Take advantage of the exclusivity on here. I'm sure it might come out on on PC in like a year or longer. Play this now. This is so good. It's so fucking well done. The combat, albeit I was playing on a harder difficulty, so things were a bit thicker, but they're also a lot more aggressive. It just doesn't come down to, okay, the harder difficulty it is, the thicker something is. They actually do have gameplay elements that change with that, which is, you just get a lot of bang for your buck, honestly. The so my personal rating is a 15 out of 10. I'm not even gonna like mesh, just 15 out of 10. I couldn't give it a better review if I tried. I loved every fucking thing about this. Now, for a relatively subjective review, trying to take my own personal bias out of it, I'm gonna give this game like a solid 9 out of 10. And I'm only giving it a 9 out of 10 and not a 10 out of 10 because though there was so much content, there's so much in it, and it hits like, you know, marks every fucking box. I will admit that it does get pretty repetitive in completing some of the goals. And even though like with on the collections tab and like the notebook tab, it separates a lot of stuff, ultimately there is not a ton of variety in what you're doing. So for instance, all the collectibles, well, that's just it. That's what they are. They're just collectibles. There's something off the beaten path that you want to go and you want to scan with your focus. That's really all it boils down to. Yes, there's certain things that are different, like some are text logs, some are audio logs, some are like actual artifacts, some are like dolls, models, figurines, whatever. The fact is, it all boils down to the exact same thing. And albeit the side missions, the story they were telling were really good, and some places got really good set pieces. Unless it was like a specific side mission, all the side activities also suffered from the repetitiveness. It's like, okay, here's an arena, go do the challenges. Okay, here's a different kind of, you know, marker, whether it be an enemy base, a cauldron, a ruin. It basically boils down to go in, solve the puzzle that is inside, get to the end, and either sometimes fight a boss or hard enemy, or just get to the end and get the treasure. The difference in those is minimal at best, because again, it kind of just boils down to the same thing, which is a different name attached to it. So I will say that this game does suffer from rampant repetitiveness. And I think depending on how into the story you are, how into the world building, and just, I guess, how into the game you are, you may or may not get the fatigue from that. So like for me personally, like I said, I loved everything about this. I couldn't get enough. So though the activities more or less boiled down to the same thing, I was still all ready and gung-ho to do it. I wanted all of the things, collect all the stuff, see all the things, go to all the places, kill all the monsters, talk to all the people. I wanted it all. But if you're not that into it, the repetitiveness will be pretty apparent, and you'll just be like, okay, what's my motivation for doing the same thing I've just done everywhere else for like the 500th time? And I think that's really going to come down to, you know, a person by person basis. But yeah, so just to kind of sum it all up, for me, I'm going to give it a 15 out of 10. My personal bias, for my personal taste, this game could not have just come off better. It was a really well packaged deal. I liked everything that the developers are trying to put forward, the universe, the combat, the art style. Loved it all. A relatively less personal opinion review of it, I would give it a 9 out of 10. And all the reasons I've already stated are why I think it's great, but the repetitiveness is very apparent. So if you put a lot of time into it, like I have, you'll start to notice how things kind of repeat themselves. But those are my thoughts on Horizon Forbidden West, as well as its DLC, Burning Shores. If you haven't gotten around to it, this is an absolute must play. It's on PS5 and PS4, but the DLC, like I said, is specifically on the PS5 only. And after seeing that fucking ending, the climax of this whole thing, I can completely understand why. But yeah,